Until last summer, the U.S. Army officer who led America's drug fight in Colombia, cocaine capital of the world, was Colonel James Hyatt. The colonel's wife is Lori Hyatt, and 2 days ago she began a 5-year prison term for smuggling cocaine and heroin from Colombia into the United States. That's right, in Colombia, where President Clinton wants to spend billions to stop the flow of drugs into the U.S. In Colombia, the wife of America's top military drug fighter was herself a drug smuggler. You may have heard about this before, but you haven't heard about it from Lori Hyatt until now. She spoke with us before going to prison, and to understand how this improbable scenario developed, one has to understand the colonel, his wife, and their marriage. Lori Hyatt met Jim when he was stationed in Panama, where she grew up. She's 12 years younger than he, a free-spirited Spitfire.
Well, I'm a whole load of fun.
But, she told us, the straight-laced life of a military wife was no fun at all. That it was so suffocating that to escape it, she became addicted to cocaine. And she took so much cocaine that 5 years ago, even she realized she needed help.
It was very stressful, and I just didn't want to do it anymore. So I checked myself into this Army hospital, and I was there for 9 days. And from there, I went directly into an outpatient rehab that they recommended for me. And after that, there's documentation in the military computer system and that, I was a drug addict and manic depressive.
Army knew it.
Army knew it. They know it, yes.
She managed to stay straight for only a few months. After she and her husband moved to Fort Bragg in North Carolina, she told us, she spent hours a day, every day, snorting cocaine for more than a year, practically under her husband's nose.
I was addicted. I could not stop.
Your husband? Mm-hmm. Didn't know?
He says he didn't know, no.
He says he didn't?
No, he says he did not know.
She says her husband simply ignored it, that he lived by don't ask, don't tell. She says that she wanted his help to get off cocaine, so... You actually snorted a line of coke in front of him? Why?
So that he would see and believe and understand, and he's going to kill me. Because I couldn't believe he didn't know. I couldn't believe it. I said, do you not know what's wrong with me right now? Do you not understand what's wrong with me? He said, no, I don't know what's wrong with you. And I said, this is what's wrong with me. And I proceeded to snort this line of cocaine. And he looked at me, and he turned around and walked out.
It was just 4 months later that the U.S. Army offered Colonel Hyatt a major promotion, fighting drugs in Colombia. But the Army record showed that his wife had been a cocaine addict, so before he could go down to Colombia, he had to convince his commanding general and the U.S. ambassador there that Lori had stopped using. The general, the ambassador, and the colonel sat down to talk about you.
Yeah.
And he said?
Well, what all good husbands who love their wives would say. She's fine. She can do it. She hasn't done drugs since '95.
But it was after that he watched you snort that line of cocaine, right? Yeah. And so he lied to the general, and he lied to the ambassador.
Yeah. When you say he lied, yeah, he did, and that's the reality. But if he lied, it wasn't to deceive the general. It was because he wanted to be with me. You see?
But there's more. Because of her cocaine past, she was supposed to be interviewed by the U.S. Army's medical office to make sure she was drug-free, but...
My husband went for me.
What do you mean?
And he went to the appointment for me.
And her medical records show that her husband had said that her drug addiction and her depression were over, that she was doing well. Before going to Colombia, did you have to take a drug test?
No.
Did anyone from the military, did anyone from the embassy there in Bogota ask you whether you were using cocaine?
No.
Nobody?
No.
So the colonel and his addict wife goes down to fight drugs in the cocaine capital of the world.
Yeah.
That's hard to believe.
It's ironic. It's just almost silly.
And Lori's attorney, Paul Lazarus, told us that when the Army sent Lori to Bogota with her husband, they, in effect, put her on a path to self-destruction.
I believe that the the military establishment or the American government in allowing Lori to go to Colombia, that it was akin to the federal government giving Willie Sutton a job in the Federal Reserve Bank. The result was inevitable.
Lori, Jim, and their two young sons moved to Colombia, where Lori was assigned her own personal driver, Jorge Ayala, a Colombian who had worked for the U.S. Embassy there for 15 years. And after a few months, Lori asked him the inevitable question.
We're pulling up to the embassy, and I said, you know, can you get me some cocaine, Jorge?
You said this to Jorge?
Yeah. I said, he said, of course, Senora Laura, I can get you cocaine. Silly question, you know? We're in Colombia, for crying out loud.
And
So-
she says that an hour later, he brought her more cocaine than she'd ever seen before.
So I pull it out of the bag, and out comes this brick, this huge, hard brick. I said, cocaine. I said, what is this, Jorge? He said, what'd you ask me for? I said, I've never seen this in my life. I was like, oh my God. And I'm thinking, oh my Lord, all I wanted was a little package, you know, like this big. Meanwhile, I'm holding my pound of cocaine. I'm like, and how much do we have to pay them? $1,000. And I'm like going, well, I just thought I was going to spend 100, you know? But that's how it started.
And as it turned out, that brick would change her life.
I had this 1 pound, 500 grams of pure Colombian cocaine underneath my jacuzzi. And it was like never ending. Oh my Lord. It was just making me nuts. I was just doing it and doing it and doing it, and it was making me crazy. And it was never going away. It was so beautiful, this, you know.
What was so beautiful?
This cocaine, when you're an addict, you can't throw it out.
She couldn't throw it out, but she thought if she took much more of it, she'd kill herself. So she decided to give it away to her friends in the States. She put the cocaine brick in the bottom of her duffel bag and carried it aboard an American Airlines flight to Miami.
And I made it through every single checkpoint in Colombia and every single checkpoint in Miami. It was like a miracle.
Her husband had been in Miami on business, and he met Lori at the airport to drive her to a friend's wedding.
And I said to my husband, oh, could you please carry my bag for me? Because I was just so tired of that bag.
He had no idea?
No. Oh, my God, no. No, 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 no.
So you get to the wedding.
Yes. I call up a friend, said, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Hope you don't die, because I'm not. You know, I gave it to him, and away I went. That was in. I got rid of it. Whew.
Then back in Bogota, when she told her driver that she'd carried cocaine through every checkpoint, including customs, his eyes lit up.
He said, you know, I've had this idea for a very, very long time. The possibility of sending
Through the
cocaine
mail.
through the U.S. mail, through this embassy mail. He said, I know it will work. I've been looking at this for years. I know it. I just know it would. He said,
And we can get rich.
we can get rich. You could build a house, and I could pay bills.
What were your bills?
I had a lot of credit card bills that were never, they were like never ending.
So this was the solution.
That was it. Simple as that.
So he would bring you what?
A kilo. It was already in a box, and I would just take the box in the embassy and say, hey, do you have any brown paper? Yeah, I got brown paper. Wrap them up. You know,
Addressed to,
he would give me the name and the address, and I would write it.
and then you would return to sender,
Return to sender.
and you put your name.
Yeah. Ooh.
That was smart.
Yeah, really smart criminal I am. Not a very smart criminal.
Here's how it worked. Since her husband worked at the embassy, Lori could use the embassy post office to send mail in a diplomatic pouch to Miami, where it then became regular mail. So that way, Lori would send a 2-pound package of cocaine to a friend of Jorge's in New York, who would sell it. She sent 3 packages, and then she flew to New York to collect her cut, about $17,000 in cash, which she brought back to Bogota. And what did she do with that pile of cash? She says she gave the drug money to her husband, America's top drug fighter in Colombia. He said, where did you get it?
Mm-hmm. I was like, here, just take this money and just take this. And he said, oh, no, oh, Lori, he said. He was sweating. He said, oh my gosh. He said, I said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I said, I'm in a little business with a friend. Just take the money and pay the bills.
Two of you talked to each other about it?
No. He would just say, look, Lori, you just, whatever you're doing, just, be careful. I'd say, no, don't worry, honey, it's nothing.
Lori sent 3 more packages through the embassy post office, and then she flew to the States again. This time, she says she got $23,000, again in cash, which she brought back to Bogota and again gave to her husband. Jim was reluctant to talk to us about all of this, but we did manage to ask him a few questions.
What went through your mind when suddenly she comes up with first $17,000 and later $23,000 in cash?
Scared beyond reason, and then what do?
You had to know that it was drug money.
I didn't want to know. I couldn't ask, I couldn't ask myself the question because I didn't want to hear the answer.
Sure. You're in a hell of a spot. Here you are, the top U.S. military guy in Colombia, fighting drugs. And your wife, you didn't want to lose her.
I still don't want to lose her.
You still love her.
Yeah, I sure do.
And I know what everybody's going to think, oh, my Lord, this man, What is he saying? It's the craziest thing on earth. I would have thrown her out the door a long time ago and said, here's your clothes and take a hike,
Mike, I love her. It's simple as that. We're through this thick or thin.
What else could you have done with the money?
I want 3 choices. I could either turn her in, and I wasn't going to do that.
Yeah.
I could pitch the money out on the street or make her pitch the money out on the street, basically disassociate myself from the money. Or I could do what I did.
And what he did, they told us, was what Lori said. He paid off their credit cards. But then, disaster. Customs agents in Miami, during a routine check, discovered drugs in Lori's next package, which had her name in the return address. Agents arrested the man who accepted delivery, and then they flew to Bogota to arrest her and Jorge, her driver.
It was over. I was through. That was it.
And then she had to tell her drug-fighting husband that she had, in fact, been smuggling drugs.
Thought he was going to die of a heart attack. It was bad. It was really bad. Yeah.
After her arrest, the Army transferred Colonel Hyatt to a desk job in Virginia, and he plans to retire, ending a 25-year career. 3 weeks ago, he pled guilty to concealing his wife's drug smuggling. He hopes to avoid prison and will be sentenced this summer. Lori was sentenced last Friday to 5 years in prison. She could be out in just over 3.
You realize, of course, that you caused an immense amount of embarrassment to the U.S. Army
Yes.
and to the United States.
Yes. Ooh, and I feel out of really, and with all my heart, so embarrassed.
Embarrassed, ashamed.
Ashamed. And I am sorry to them. I am sorry every day. I am.